Swaik and welcome back to another video. Still working on a couple of photo projects, and I wanted to make this video for quite a while, speaking about the Fuji X-H2 that is to be expected this year, and a lot of people are quite excited, even those who were disappointed about the X-T4 because of the flip screen and other stuff. A lot of photographers want the H2 to have a lot more photo features than just video and mainly the flip screen, but we'll get to that later. And so before the H2 comes out, I would like to have my take on it. And once again, this is mainly to do with the body design. We can go very deep into the menus or types of video features and other software, but it seems that a lot of people have done those topics already. I'm mainly interested in the body design, ergonomics, and of course throw a little bit of spice into the mix that I don't expect will happen, but I think it will be pretty cool if it did. So I first have for you a list so you can sort of skip around to go to parts that you are interested. So first off, I would like to go through and have a strong foundation about what I see in the Fuji camera lineup, between photography focused cameras to the hybrids and then to the video focused cinema cameras, and then will define what makes a cinema camera. And of course this is my own subjective opinion. Of course you can feel free to comment below what makes a cinema camera, because there will be so many more people more experienced in this kind of stuff. This is just my own observation and what other people are talking about, and then giving you some design references, and then my own final design and a couple of conclusions. With that said, the system of Fuji cameras, as you can see before you, is mainly in the photography focus and hybrid. And here we have just a couple of GFX cameras that are very photography focused because of their higher megapixel cameras, and then FujiFilm's rangefinder style cameras of the Pro 3 X100V are also on the photography side. With the X100V and the tilt screen, it's slightly towards the hybrid stuff, since you can place it on a tripod to do some video as a B camera, let's say. And Big Head Taco, his YouTube channel, have done something like that in one of his videos, and showing that it is possible. With the addition of IBIS, the X-T4 and X-H2 in the previous year, Fujifilm has sort of moved slightly towards the hybrid and towards video focus camera. With the X-H2 and X-T4, I sort of move it slightly towards the video side because of the flip out screen. That screen would benefit a video user more than a photographer, let's say, even though as a video user sometimes you want just to tilt up and down because you don't want to flip it out to see yourself. But as for bloggers who want to video themselves, a tilt screen will benefit them much more. So that's why those two cameras are on the video side of things. And so the tilt screen or three-way tilt screen that people love in the X-T3 are on the photography side. And without IBIS, it's not really a great hybrid camera for video because of the less stabilization. But interesting where the H1 comes in, and this is more on the hybrid and video side and a little bit lower than the X-T4 because it's a much older camera. But looking at the Fujifilm website, they still place the X-H1 as a higher tier above the Pro 3 and X-T4, even though those two cameras are newer. So in this case, I sort of believe that the H series cameras will continue to be their flagship cameras, even though they might have made a slip up in the release of the H1 and the X-T3 coming in too soon to cannibalize the market. But even so, the H1 cameras have been still a fan favorite for those who have bought it and continue to buy the camera in the upcoming years that have passed in 2019 and 2020. So in this case, I sort of predict either the H2 cameras will just be a tier above the X-T4 for various reasons that we will get into, or it would push towards the video cinema side because the X-T4 with IBIS and the flip out screen has sort of also pushed towards the video even more closer to the H1. In the past, the X-T3 and H1 were sort of neck to neck between whether you want the better video files in the X-T3 or you want the IBIS in the X-H1, with the X-T4 being the best of both worlds besides the ergonomics and the smaller grip as a small downside. The H1 will certainly need to pick up the pace and either give us even better video files than the X-T4 and become another hybrid camera, or go even more focused towards the video side that the X-T4 cannot really compete, or is not part of its design form. So with that, I just want to compare with other cameras that have been released in the past, and so other brands have achieved some sort of clear designs and models for focus on photography. So it will be higher resolutions for photography, and then more hybrid in their mid-tier cameras, and then another camera for even high-end video or high-end hybrids. So the Canon R5 with its high megapixels and also high resolution similar to the Lumix S1H, and then their mid-tier is the like A7 III or Lumix S1. I kind of made a mistake with the naming scheme. On the photo side of the Nikon is supposed to be the C7, but never mind for that. Basically, you understand it's like 40-ish megapixels for the photography side, so it's less of a hybrid if someone wants to do both video and photos. And only Sony seems to be pushed for the video cinema side with the A7S III, and I placed it there because it's the lowest resolution while sort of trying to focus a lot on video features for the user. The Canon R6, even though it's 20 megapixels, which is sort of below average of the 24, I still place it in the hybrid since 20 megapixels still is good enough for photography, and I could sort of place it sort of in between hybrid and video, but they don't seem to be pushing the R6 the same way that the Sony A7S III has been marketed. So to the cinema line has always been towards the ports and ND filters, which is sort of, and there's so much more features in cinema, of course, but this is sort of the main things that I sort of personally see, which is the audio ports, the power, the larger HDMI ports, and ND filters built into the camera that are all very useful to people who want to do video. And with the recent FX6 on Sony side with the graduated ND filter versus the Canon C70 with the more stops of ND filter but no graduation, it will be interesting if Fuji is able to implement one or the other into their camera if it were towards a cinema line. Other examples would be the C100, C200, about the ergonomics of how the grip is designed, and just more ports or more buttons for people to press easily to get to certain menu features that they want very quickly. But for the intro cinema line, and one example is still the A7S III, simply because for a lot of people that I've seen talked about the LUT being very similar to the cinema line, so the A7S III is also sort of dipping its toes into the cinema realm based on the files that it's able to produce and the LUT that it's able to record, to have the same look as the other more high-end cinema cameras that Sony has. As for other cameras, we have the Blackmagic 4K or 6K, that is also a very affordable cinema camera that has other downsides for its very great files and great cost. So the downsides are obviously the battery, no IBIS, and requires someone to rig it up, which is very common for anyone who's doing cinema. Another example that I found is the Canon XE10 or XE15, and of course this is sort of the lowest tier if one would want to define this camera as a cinema camera, but in this case I only reference it because it's so small, and a body like this to add like a FujiFilm X mount, and I know the XE series, they have a built-in lens, which is sort of the downside of this camera. The lens might not be as great as one would want, or they would prefer to be able to switch lenses. So I can totally imagine like a XE style body with the Fuji X mount, so you can switch lenses, and just the small IBIS sensor. For the XE camera, it's a smaller 1-inch sensor, something like that, so of course that wouldn't do, but using the same APS-C sensor with that kind of body that is still small and compact, and the grip itself can rotate, which is good for filmmakers, is another interesting option to see. So back to the main camera and my own prediction and feeling that it's still best for Fujifilm again to produce another hybrid camera that is just a step above the X-T4. A lot of cameras these days have pushed the full HDMI ports, and for Fuji to just make their body slightly bigger to be able to fit in a HDMI port would be really good to stay competitive, and no longer use the mini HDMI port or other sort of micro HDMI ports anymore. With the screen design, and this is still hypothetical if they're still going to make a flip out screen, as you can see in number 2 and number 3, is the idea that the ports and the headphone jack would need to be out of the way, similar to the Sony A7S III, and same with the Panasonic S1H, where those microphones are actually above where the screen will be. And for the X-T4, it's just not as tall for the microphone port to get out of the way. For the H1, it's slightly taller, but Fujifilm will still need to move it slightly. So in design 1, with the regular 3-way tilt screen like the X-T3, there's no concern for that, so the microphone port can be wherever it wants to be, but having the 2 ports close to each other side by side is still a good idea, which the X-T4 already has. As for the flip out screen, then moving it towards the front might be an option, and just putting the HDMI port and the microphone port just side by side can sort of help to make the wiring more neat. And with design 4, if they would go for the Panasonic route to add an internal fan, then that space where the flip screen will be rotating will be where the fan placement be. Maybe not that large, but hopefully you get the idea. And of course a USB-C port, just so that you can power the camera through an external battery. As for the battery grip, this is where things starts to get a little bit interesting, and this is something from a video that I saw from YLAM, who used to be a FujiFilm commentator talking about news, and now is using more Canon stuff and doing Canon videos. He spoke about heat control, and I was just thinking in design too, what if the battery grip, since you are a video shooter, you wouldn't use or go vertical at all, and so the battery grip itself has a design of an internal fan to suck air out of the body and then push it downwards. And instead of using the battery inside of the camera, of course the battery grip itself will have 2 batteries, and of course we'll be using the new X-T4 batteries in this case. A small mistake that Fuji might have done that sort of displeased a couple of users is to take out the power port in the battery grip itself that the X-T2 and X-T3 used to have. And listening to Big Head Taco again express his concerns was that you used to be able to charge both batteries inside the battery grip itself while using the main camera somewhere else. You just place the 2 batteries inside the grip, and then you just plug in the power supply directly into the grip, and then you'll be charging the 2 batteries, and then your other camera is free. But right now with the X-T4, they want you to sort of charge up the camera through the USB-C directly into the camera body, which is sort of a not as good design as previous X-T3 grip design. So in case in design 3, as you can see, there's like more ports, and that is sort of mainly to want to try to have the grip to have like the mini XLR ports similar to the Canon C70, but in this case I sort of switch it up and move it to design 4, where the ports is actually on the other side of the camera, where usually you would place your thumb or hand if you want to go vertical. But since again we're not going vertical in this case, the space there can be used to place a mini XLR ports, maybe 2, maybe just 1. And again, this is sort of to say that there would be 2 battery grips in this case. So for photographers, the battery grip will remain the same as usual, nothing changed, but there will be a second battery grip that will be designed for video shooters, not only to give them extra batteries, but since they're not going vertical mode at all in this case because they're shooting video, there might be room to add again mini XLR ports to connect directly to the camera. So back again with some conclusion, is that the H2 should sort of try to push up and beyond what the X-T4 is, and this time just use the X-T3 style flip 3-way tilt screen, because the X-T4 already have a flip out screen. It's best for Fuji to try to have the tilt screen instead. In this case, one will not be vlogging themselves as much or anymore with such a higher end camera, and if they do want to sort of see themselves, people who would buy this camera might already have their very own screen to sort of connect it through HDMI, and these types of monitoring screens are fairly affordable these days. As for the interesting XS10 model, it seems to be similar to the XT30 realm, so this could sort of suggest that there will be an XS1 as Fujifilm future and true sort of cinema video focus camera that we can get into in the future, which is to suggest that there might be a XT40 coming as a photography focused camera. Maybe it can still be smaller or without the grip as usual, and a reason to still have that is to still have the tilt screen for the XT40 and the traditional analog style dials, while the XS10 is the more general dials that we see in every other camera brand. So to conclude, the H2 with the DSLR style body, feel free to make it bigger, not only for heat management but also to have larger ports like a full HDMI port, have a 3-way tilt screen like the X-T3, and with a larger body be able to control heat management for hopefully unlimited record time. And then one last thing for ergonomics is switching modes quickly, not just having photo and movie, but adding one more mode like movie 1, movie 2 to switch between either normal video recording and then slow motion, or normal video recording and then higher resolution recording. It really is up to you, or just have it in a hotkey. I try to sort of check up on like the X-T4 if there's such a thing, but I have not come across it so far, so I wanted to just get this video done as soon as possible. But if there is, then that's great. As for a cinema style body, larger XLR ports for audio, and then internal ND filter, either it's a gradual ND or a step ND. Again, I prefer gradual to be able to use the ND to sort of change the exposure while shooting than having it be a step. And then for cinema style body, of course they would need a fan to control heat, because they would be pushing out much higher quality video for sure. With that said, I thought this video would go shorter, but it's already quite long. So of course feel free to share your own ideas about the ergonomics and body design down below. Again, this is all for like fun, and hopefully I'll be able to bring out a proper photography vlog next time. I'm already done with all of this body design hypotheticals and I'll see you all next time. Bye for now.